Good afternoon, Dylan with Huntsville Guns. I had a phone call earlier today about a topic that I think would make a pretty decent video. I want to cover some terminology and then kind of give you a visual representation of a couple of different things. Like I said, I get asked pretty regularly about barrel changes, particularly on bolt action rifles. And I think there's a little bit of maybe misinformation. So when you go to your gunsmith and you talk about a barrel change, you can see a pretty significant spread in the price for barrel change services. So for example, to swap a barrel on an AR-15 for me personally here in the shop is somewhere to the tune of about $100. It's just basically compensating for my time to pull the gun apart, unscrew the barrel nut, swap the barrel, put the barrel nut back on, make sure the gas system is in alignment, and send it on out the door. Pretty straightforward. But with bolt actions, it's a little more complex than that, and there is an increase in the availability of pre-fit barrels on the market. And so these barrels are marketed to the kind of hobby crowd or do-it-yourself crowd. But not all things are created equal. And so I wanted to make a video to kind of cover the terminology and then also give you a look at what we're talking about to offer a little bit of insight. So when you order a barrel for a rifle, bolt action rifle, you will see that there are barrel blanks. That's literally like what it sounds like. It's a blank canvas. It's a barrel. It may have some threads cut on one end and it may be partially chambered, but it is definitely by no means meant to screw into the receiver and go to work. There's a lot of machine time involved and fitting and head spacing to make that a functional barrel for that particular rifle. Then you have pre-fit barrels, which are already threaded on the receiver end to thread into the receiver, and they are already most of the time short chambered at a minimum, if not fully chambered, finish reamed and everything. And those are aimed at the hobby crowd. And then you have kind of an in-between. So a non-barrel nut style barrel that is designed to be fit and finished by somebody like myself, who's going to finish ream it and then time it to the action and set the headspace. So a pre-fit barrel can be made for several different action types. I'm pretty sure they make them for the majority of the modern commercial actions, Remington 700, Savage, things of that nature. But they also make them for older actions. So think of a Mauser action. They do make a pre-fit barrel for Mausers now. And when you're looking at barrels, how they go together and how the headspace is set is what you need to take into consideration. Even if you're not doing this change yourself, somebody like myself who is going to be swapping a barrel for you is going to need to know this information when you start the phone call or the in-person conversation. And so let's cover a few things. So here we have a Mauser action. This is a customer's gun that's in for some reliability issues, but it is a commercial FN Mauser action and a barrel that is chambered in 257 Weatherby. But if you look here, you see the receiver and you see the barrel, and they are one is threaded directly into the other one. There are no exterior threads here or a barrel nut. And so this is a gunsmith fit barrel. So the receiver is fit, or the barrel is fit to this receiver, and the headspace is set by turning the back of the barrel and finish reaming the chamber to set the headspace. Fairly complex. This is probably the most complex barrel fitting method just because of the number of steps involved in the specialty tooling required. You have to have a lathe. You have to have the ability to check and set headspace, especially in the Mauser world where you have extractor claws that stick out past the bolt face, and there has to be a cutout in that barrel, the breech of that barrel for that claw. Pretty labor intensive. One of the most expensive barrel work jobs you're going to see at your gunsmith shop. Then you have like a Savage. This is a Savage 111, which has a barrel nut setup. And so the barrel has threads on the exterior of it, here under the nut, and those threads thread into the receiver. And then when the headspace is achieved, using a headspace gauge, you torque the barrel nut down. These require a specialty wrench for the barrel nut style. Not all of these are created equal, so this is a Savage specific barrel nut. It's designed for the large nut and small nut. Savage had a couple of different sizes that they used, even going back into the Stevens family. So this is a large nut, and this wrench would be used to torque that barrel nut. Fairly straightforward process. You need to hold the action in an action vise and then torque the barrel up once the headspace is set. A couple of different options or approaches to the same thing. This is a Ruger American. Here you can see, if it will focus, here you can see we have a barrel, we have the receiver, and then we have a nut here that doesn't have any flats or any knurling on it or any slots for a wrench. And so this requires my least favorite barrel nut wrench is something like this. And so it is cut to the OD of that barrel nut, and then it is clamped on and a torque wrench used to set the torque. This is a shop-made tool, but there are also commercial-made tools for the job. I would say that if you are fairly handy and a do-it-yourself kind of person, that a Savage style or a barrel nut style pre-fit is something that can be accomplished. I think there's some tooling that you're going to have to take into consideration, your purchase price for the tooling and a vise and an adequate way to hold this to not cause any damage. Headspace gauges, which you can rent, but ultimately I like to purchase them because they can be used forever. So the cost to purchase and set up to do one of these jobs with a pre-fit barrel can sometimes exceed the cost to have somebody like me do it. I'm relatively affordable when it comes to pre-fit barrels as far as installing them goes. Kind of depends on the action type, but they are affordable to swap a barrel on because they are easier to do. There's a lot less time involved. I do have some specialty tooling that's involved, but I either make it or can purchase it and then use it multiple times. So like this action wrench for a Savage, it's been used a couple of dozen times. I've made my money back time and time again. Like I said, when looking at a replacement barrel for a rifle, the terminology you want to consider is Mauser barrel. This is off a Yugo Mauser. Came off a customer's gun. It's in trash shape on the inside, and so was removed for a replacement. And so your barrel thread diameter, your thread pitch and diameter here is critical. The style of barrel you're using, so this is not a pre-fit barrel. This is a short chambered barrel that would have to be finish reamed for the appropriate headspace and caliber. And then, like I said, a slot cut here for the extractor on your bolt. But when having these conversations with your gunsmith, it is worthwhile noting what the action is and what the replacement barrel is going to be. So on a Mauser style action, somebody calls me and says, "Hey Dylan, I'd like to rebarrel this Mauser that I have." I'm going to ask you what Mauser it is, because there were several of them in several different designs made in several different countries, several different thread pitches over a huge span of years. They still make Mausers, or the Mauser brand is still in existence. And so I want to know what it is, what caliber it's in currently, because the bolt head diameter is important, what caliber you're switching to, and then which barrel setup you're trying to use. So the customer that called me this week has a Defiance action, which is based off of a Remington 700, and he is using a Proof Research pre-fit barrel. So the instead of having an existing rifle that we're rebarreling, it is a virgin action that has never had a barrel put in it, and then a Proof pre-fit barrel. So the chamber is finish reamed, and it comes with a barrel nut and the threads for that action. So I'm simply assembling what he has purchased. I want to know caliber, like I said, because bolt head diameter becomes very important, and also to make sure that the caliber you're switching to fits into the receiver. Not all things are created equal. For example, this Mauser was originally an 8mm Mauser and is now in 257 Weatherby. That's a much longer cartridge than an 8mm Mauser. And so the bottom of the receiver had to be opened up and inletted to allow that longer cartridge to be used. A lot more work involved in something like that than simply spinning off a barrel nut, putting a new barrel on, and spinning the barrel nut back on. My goal with this video is to provide a little bit of insight. Gunsmithing seems to be kind of a foreign concept to some people. It's a bit difficult to wrap your mind around something without seeing it visually, and so this is just my effort to give you a visual representation of what it is that we're discussing when you call me on the phone and you have a project in mind. Not all things are created equal. Sometimes you can have a project that is what we will call a square peg in a round hole, and you have an action that has a thread that is not easily duplicated, i.e. a Japanese Arisaka, or you have a caliber that won't fit in the receiver that you're trying to use. So a short action Ruger American that was originally in 308, which you want to rechamber into 300 Win Mag. Those things don't work together. And so the more information you can bring to your gunsmith in the initial conversations, the easier it is to iron out a plan and to determine the viability of what it is you're trying to accomplish. I hope this is a helpful video. Thanks for hanging out this afternoon, guys. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. If you like what we're doing here, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and click that subscribe button to see more content in the future. Thanks. Have a great evening.